Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of David's Divergent Discussions. It's a little shorter than usual, but we're here to talk about the CAMHS crisis. This has been an ongoing campaign that has been going on thanks to my guest, Emma, and we will be talking about the issues with CAMHS and why the campaign is happening. Um, so, as I said, I'm David Gray Hammond. A brief audio description: I'm a white Mediterranean male in his mid-30s wearing thick rimmed glasses, a beard, a lip piercing, and an ear tunnel, sat in a blue room next to the famously rickety bookcase. And Emma is not on camera, but I will let Emma just tell you a little bit about themselves quickly now.
Hi, my name's Emma Dalmayne. I'm an autistic rights campaigner. I fight against autistic abuse. I'm 47. I have 6 wonderful people that I made, all autistic except for one, poor thing. And yeah, that's me.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked Emma's work out yet, you really should. Google Emma Dalmayne and you'll find some really quite shocking information about some of the abuses that Emma has had to fight. And the work that Emma does is just so important. But obviously, anyone who's been following my writing recently will know I've been writing a lot about CAMHS, and that's really because I'm trying to bring attention to this campaign that Emma has started, looking at the issue with CAMHS refusing to see autistic service users. Emma, do you want to tell us a bit about what brought you to the doing this campaign?
Yeah, sure. My son is 15. His name is Damien. He's been having some mood swings, and just feeling generally very low. That started at the beginning of 2020 during lockdown. I made a referral myself to CAMHS and never heard anything back. So this year, he went up to see his pediatrician at our local hospital, and he happened to mention that he was still feeling quite low. So she said that she would make a referral to CAMHS. And I said they won't see him because he's autistic, because I had heard that that had been happening, through other parents. She said, oh, no, they'll see him. So she made the referral, and I'd say maybe 4 weeks later, I got a letter saying that they acknowledge that Damien has emotional difficulties, but do not feel at this time that mental health services would be of any help. They also note that he has a diagnosis of ASD. Therefore, they feel that a referral to MASH, which is child safeguarding, and the Children with Disabilities team would be more appropriate. Neither of those services can refer to therapies for mental health. They also cannot prescribe medication if needed. So both of them were useless. And I thought, well, you know what? They're not going to be doing that to my son. I'd been at the inquest of a lady, her name is Julia Corot, and her son had taken his own life. I'd been there the day before, and he was autistic as well. And I just thought, they're not fucking doing this to my son. This is not happening. So I started a petition. It is at 197,000 signatures now. A lot of the people are autistic that have signed, that have been let down themselves by CAMHS. There's a lot of parents whose children and teenagers have been turned away that are autistic. And there's a lot of adults that were failed as well. I've also spoken to parents whose children have gone on to take their own life after being turned away from CAMHS.
Yeah, and I think this is really important to highlight because research has indicated that in the UK, autistic young people are up to 28 times more likely to think about or attempt suicide. And when you think about the fact you've got 197,000 signatures, that's potentially 197,000 families that have been failed by CAMHS for their autistic children. And, I was one of those children. I was referred to CAMHS multiple times. The most I got was a 5-minute appointment in which they did exactly nothing. And for me, that had huge knock-on effects for my adult life. I developed an addiction. I became schizophrenic. Lots of things which perhaps could have been avoided if the right support had been put in place when I was younger. And it really, really concerns me that we've got these autistic children, let's face it, when you're an autistic child, the world is a traumatic place, from sensory stuff. You might be dealing with people trying to push quack cures on you. You might be dealing with bullying in school. There are so many things that are horrific about being an autistic child in a world that is very discriminatory towards autistic people. And CAMHS are refusing to support them. It's just not acceptable, is it?
Well, there's no better way than the government showing that they don't care about autistic people than this, really, is there? I mean, they already don't want parents getting EHCPs. They don't want to give the support in schools because they don't believe our children and teenagers will grow up to be taxpayers. And now you've got CAMS saying, "Oh, you want to kill yourself? I'm sorry, we're not going to help you. But you go on now. Just off you go."
Absolutely, and I think, it really highlights the fact that, that we don't like to talk about it, but there is a financial value on everyone's lives, and apparently we're not valuable enough to keep us going,
Alive. Yeah.
keep us alive, and I've worked myself with so many autistic young people who have been failed by services, and CAMHS is
Mm,
one of the biggest culprits, and the fact that they refer autistic young people to safeguarding for men. If you're not if you're not an autistic young person, there's a chance that your mental health will, be addressed, albeit not necessarily perfectly, but it will be
mm.
addressed. But if you're an autistic young person, a mental health problem is immediately a safeguarding thing. And it comes back to that whole idea of institutionalized parent carer blame, I think, where
Oh,
we like to
massively.
yeah, we like, the services like to place the onus of responsibility on the parents of disabled children rather than look at the societal issues, the systemic issues, the lives of minority groups such as autistic young people. And I
Yeah.
certainly think, it gets even more complicated when you start to bring in intersectionality as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So 197,000 signatures. What happens when we hit the 200,000 mark?
We will be taking the petition up to the head office and holding a protest at the same time. There's a
Okay,
lot of people, so many kids have been let down. It can't be allowed to continue. And
absolutely.
it
And
won't be. It won't be allowed to continue.
no, it has to stop because, at a
Mm.
certain point, we have to draw this line in the sand and say, these are our children and they deserve to be treated with the same dignity and respect as any other child.
Exactly.
I
I've
think
spoken to his pediatrician. She's now made another referral. She was disgusted that they've turned him down. I said, "There's no point making." She said, "I'll just keep referring because the more times that I refer and they turn you down, the more evidence you got." So
absolutely. Absolutely. And, when I think of stories like that of Julia Careau and her son, and, other stories that have been in the news, they were completely unavoidable deaths if CAMS had
yeah,
done their job.
exactly. If only
And
the support had have been put in place in the right time at in the appropriate way, which it wasn't. He was
And I think
too
this
old to help
highlights
you.
another issue about CAMS as well is the few who have made it through the door, the support they have received has been so subpar that it's tantamount to negligence.
The thing is, they either go one way or the other, mental health in this country, it seems, for kids, teens, and autistic adults. It's either don't see you at all, even if you're self-injuring and cutting and whatever else, don't see you at all, or section you and put you in a ATU hundreds of miles away from your family. Why is it that sort of extreme at either end? Why isn't there just a happy medium where they can access the right treatment?
Certainly, I know that I have done myself two stays in a psychiatric ward where being autistic in a psychiatric ward, it's not a pleasant experience. It's not a pleasant experience if you're not autistic, but if you are
Mm,
autistic, there seems to be extra layers to the unpleasantness. And I definitely agree that there is a habit between doing nothing or doing too much, but there's no meaningful support in between. You're
none.
either detained or you're not supported at all. And if you are detained, when you're, discharged, the support that's offered to you because they legally have to under Section 117 of the Mental Health Act the support that's put in place under Section 117 when you are finally released from the psychiatric unit, it's not appropriate. It's very generic, one size fits all, and nine
Mm.
times out of ten, autistic people will be positioned as not engaging or being difficult service users, and I
Yeah.
think that's fundamentally wrong.
The interesting thing about all of this is CAMHS are going against their own eligibility criteria.
Yes, do you want to tell us a bit about that eligibility criteria?
They are meant to see autistic kids and teens with mental health conditions. It's in their eligibility criteria right at the bottom. It's there in black and white, and yet they're still turning people away.
Yes, and it also highlights to me because in the UK we have what's called legal parity between physical and mental health. But if you can deny access to
Hmm.
mental health services for specific groups of people, then I would argue you're going against that legal parity because if you said, well, I'm not going to treat your broken leg because you're autistic, that would be overtly illegal. But for some reason, they get away with it because it's mental health.
Well, we have seen that, haven't we? The young man that we went up and protested for in Liverpool, William, they were denying him a new kidney because he was autistic.
So it seems as though there's legal parity for mental and physical health unless you're autistic, really, unless you have
Well,
some
if
kind
you
of
look at the do not resuscitate orders that were put out on people during the lockdown.
yeah, and I think this really highlights the fact that that there is a huge disparity between the way that non-autistic and autistic people are treated by medical services in the UK. And we wonder why so many people with autistic children or autistic people themselves end up turning towards private services. It's because our NHS services are gatekeeping life saving treatments for both physical and mental health.
Yeah, exactly. Can't argue with that. That's exactly what's happening. It's
You know,
appalling.
and it really concerns me when you see certain media outlets speaking out against, the accuracy of private systems. The question is, well, where are we supposed to go? Because the NHS isn't helping us. And don't get me wrong, I love the NHS in principle, and I think there should be a lot more funding for it. But they also need to take a serious look at the discrimination that's going on towards autistic people.
For that to happen, we actually need people to care about autistic people, and it's quite evident that there's not much of that about.
No, but what does impress me, Emma, is that your petition does show there's 197,000 people who cared enough to put their voice to the argument that something should be done. So I
Yeah.
think that's an important start.
A lot of people have said, "Oh, isn't it wonderful? It's got so many signatures." Actually, it's not wonderful because that means that many people have been affected,
Exactly.
which is horrific.
I think that's people really need to realize that you don't get a fifth of a million signatures without something being a really deep-seated issue. This is a lot of people who have been failed. This is a lot of lives that have been put in danger or potentially lost. And people need to listen to that. That many signatures really shows the breadth of this issue. And I believe that you know this is just the start of something. We need to push. We need to push for services in this country to do their jobs when it comes to autistic people.
We do. But isn't it terrible that we're having to do that?
Yes, it is. It's absolutely awful.
Especially fighting for the right to survive.
Yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about the fact that the systems of this country care so little about our well-being that we have to do this. We shouldn't have to sit here and say, please see our children, please support
Mhm.
us.
No, we
It
shouldn't.
should be something.
Yeah, it should be an automatic, if your child is feeling suicidal, if they're feeling low, and contemplating hurting themselves or already hurting themselves, that they should be seen by somebody. It shouldn't be, oh, but they're autistic, so we're going to turn them down. And when the poor social worker phoned me from the MASH team, she was completely confused as to why she was calling me. She said, I've got this referral. I don't exactly know what it's for. So I explained to her, and she was disgusted and asked for permission to contact CAMHS herself on our behalf. I said, yeah, please do. I said, it's honestly probably not going to make much of a difference. But she said she would anyway. I've heard nothing back about that. I spoke to the GP. She said that she had referred us to social services because that is what it said to do on the letter. And I said, well, did you not think, what could social services do about this? And she said, yeah, I did, but that's what CAMHS said to do. So I just followed their instructions. Now that could have been extremely traumatic to suddenly get a phone call from social services. Luckily, it's not, because I'm quite used to dealing with them, through the campaigning and everything else. But the GP didn't even know what to do either. So she said that she would also contact CAMHS. I've heard nothing back. So it's appalling. I've actually got a friend whose son was recently diagnosed autistic. He's got a referral to CAMHS, and she's not going to tell him he's autistic because she's terrified that he won't get any mental health help.
And it's wrong when parents are put in that position because, you know, it goes to show that, when we say that professionals do not understand autism, they don't know how to work with us, this really proves our point, because if they knew how to work with us, if it was something they knew how to do, they would have less of a justification for behavior like this.
You know what? All I've got to do is treat us like human beings.
Yeah.
That would be a start.
Unfortunately, there is a huge issue in the world at large with dehumanizing autistic people. And I think perhaps one of the most prevalent issues that's relevant to this situation is that misconception, that myth that autistic people are these emotionless, unempathetic robots. We're not.
Yeah.
We have rich inner lives. We have feelings, thoughts. We're hyper empathetic at times. And we need help because this world is not kind to us, and still services turn us away.
Yeah, they do.
Yep. It's fundamentally wrong. Well, this is a shorter episode, and I'm aware, Emma, that you need to get away, but thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this.
I'd love to thank you so much because you've been so supportive. You've done so many blogs and shared everything, and I'd just like to thank you for that because, if more people were like you and shared it a little bit more, that would really help.
Well, I really hope that the people listening to this will go away and share the hell out of the articles, the petition. You can find all of it on my website, emergentdivergence.com. If you go to the CAMHS crisis page, there's links to the petition, links to articles. Go out there and share about it as much as possible, because we need this issue to become a mainstream issue. It can't just be something that a few autistic people are talking about. It's got to be something that everyone is talking about.
Yeah.
It needs to be a big issue. This is a scandal that is under discussed. And, we're at crisis point now. So, Emma, thank you so much for everything you're doing for starting.
David, can I also just say it'd be great if everyone could contact their MPs. So if you don't know who your local MP is, just have a Google, you'll be able to find them. When you contact them, if you put your address and postcode in there so that they know that you're one of their constituents, and just say, that you're concerned about this. Put a link to the petition in and just say, look, what's going to happen about this. I am working with Barry Shearman of the Westminster Autism Commission. I am speaking to him next week, and he's hoping to raise this in Parliament in question time. I'm also hoping to, he wants me to already, he wants me to speak to the Westminster Autism Commission to hopefully get something done on their end. Just a survey of the amount of damage that they can bring then to Parliament and say, this is the state of this. So yeah, please do go out, talk to your councillor, talk to your MPs, and just, tag family and friends on the petition, tag anyone who you think will care. And let's do this, because we can't have our kids dying just because they're autistic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you're contacting your MP and you're not sure what to say, I've written a brief on my website, CAMHS crisis page on my website, emergentdivergence.com. And you can use it as like a basis for starting a letter to your MP that, this is really important. So please do get out there and do it. Emma, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. Thank you so much for starting this campaign. And I will certainly continue to support it as much as I can, and be sure that I will do protests about this, because mental health is one of the main topics I'm concerned with in the autistic community, and the mental health of our children is.
It's such a huge need in the autistic community, all these things happening, and people just aren't realizing what's going on.
But
I
we're
think
gonna.
there's an assumption when you've got a diagnosis, or even if you don't, but there is an assumption from other people that if you are disabled in any way, that you automatically get what you need, and that's so far from the truth.
Yeah,
So
no,
far from the truth.
it's a real
Mhm.
battle, and I know that as an
Mhm.
independent advocate. The reason people like me exist is a real battle to get what you need, what you're
Yeah.
entitled to. So, um, again, thank you, Emma. I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go now. And thank you to everyone who tuned in live. And if you're listening to this afterwards, thank you so much. Please share this episode as much as you can. And please share the stuff that I've linked to on my website on the CAMHS crisis page. It's been really good having you on, Emma. And I'm sure we'll catch you again at some point. So thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye.